Hi, everyone. We're going to give folks a chance to log in and then we'll get started. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us today in the Delaware Broadband office for a really exciting moment in our program, which is where we're kicking off the official application process to become a subgrantee of the Bead program. So really exciting moment. Thank you to everyone here for your interest in the program and for wanting to learn more about how this works. So what we're going to do is go through the Bead program at kind of a general high level. Pretty quickly, though, we're going to assume a base level of knowledge from most of the people on this call. Then we'll go through the first phase of our application process, which is called the pre-qualification phase. We'll talk about how that phase fits into the overall application process. Then we'll go to the specifics of the pre-qualification application. We'll have some final notes, and then if there's time, we will start Q&A. And I'm going to go into a little more detail in a slide in a little bit about the Q&A, because we're doing Q&A a little more formally with this presentation than maybe we have with other town halls in the past. So to table set a little bit, one, this webinar is being recorded. As a result, it's going to be published online, hopefully tomorrow, knock on wood, assuming everything goes well. So we'll put it up on YouTube, put the link to that on our website. The audience for this call are prospective Bead applicants for deployment activities. Now, I'm going to describe some of these key terms later, but what that generally means is when I'm speaking, I'm generally referring to folks who would apply to our office, to the Delaware Broadband office, for a subgrant to deliver high-speed internet infrastructure to homes and businesses in Delaware that don't have it. There may be other folks on this call who are constituents or maybe represent nonprofit groups or advocates. You're very welcome to this call. We're glad that you're here and interested in the program, but the conversation will be geared towards those prospective applicants for Bead. There'll be no materials or questions about anything other than the Bead application for deployment activities. So in a lot of our webinars, we cover town halls, virtual town halls. We cover lots of different programs that our office is running. But this presentation will not include any information about the Digital Equity Act, Bead non-deployment funding, or our ARPA-funded deployment projects. This is specifically about Bead the prospective Bead applications for deployment activities. The Bead application, as you'll see, we're going to go through it. It's been approved by the National Telecommunication and Information Administration. That's our federal overseer. And therefore, it is set in stone. So this is also not a forum, folks out there, you might have concerns about may wish that we had done the application in a slightly different way or whatever. This isn't the forum for that. We will always receive any commentary that you have, but it's not this is not the time to do that, because we are not changing the application at this point. There was a long process we went through to get this approved. Can't really change it now. If you had questions or comments about the application, hopefully you submitted them during the formal public comment period last November. If you didn't, unfortunately, we're not in a position to change it. You can always send in comments. We'll always review any comment, complaint, or thought at any time. But at this point, we are not going to be changing this program. Something about Q&A. So as I mentioned, in a lot of our town halls webinars, we have a pretty, I don't say informal, but pretty open dialogue. This is going to operate a little differently. Because we're starting a process where we're going to be giving out significant amounts of taxpayer money, of public money, we, in a competitive bid process, we're going to be pretty formal about the way we answer questions. because we want to be sure that every prospective applicant is getting the exact same information down to the letter, the same wording, everything is the same for everyone who's thinking about applying. That way it's perfectly fair. So what we're going to do is you can submit questions now using the Q&A feature in Zoom. If it's a simple, straightforward question, we have Amy on the line. And hi, Amy. I mean, I don't think she could actually unmute or anything, but Amy's here. Amy's from our amazing partner, CTC Consulting, that helps us with the technical implementation of Bead. She will be able to answer questions in the Q&A in writing. If any questions are more complicated or might lend themselves to sort of answer for me or Amy answering verbally, she'll save those to the end. If we don't end up having time for Q&A, because there's a lot of material that I'm going to try to get through, these questions that are put in Q&A will be absorbed into our question period. What that is we will accept written questions on the application materials through May 31st. After May 31st, and you can email those questions to this email address on your screen, bead, B-E-A-D, @delaware.gov. Send the questions there. Do not send them directly to me. All of you probably have my email address. Don't send them to anyone else on our team. Please only send questions to bead@delaware.gov. Once that question period is over, we will compile a document that answers all the questions that we received. We may simplify them or combine them if they're duplicative questions. Then we will post that document on our website so that everyone sees the exact same answers. After May 31st, you are still welcome to submit questions. We will not guarantee a response. So here's what I mean by that. Please still send them in. If we get a lot of questions after May 31st on the same topic and it's clear there's a lot of confusion, we may push out an update to our Q&A document. But going through all the clearances we need to go through, that can take a while. There will not be quick responses to questions sent into this email address. So really take the time to review the application substantively before May 31st, send in those questions, and then we'll answer them for everyone. After May 31st, you can still send in questions. I will not guarantee a response, and I certainly will not guarantee a quick response. So first, real quick overview of the Bead program. Again, we're assuming a certain level of knowledge from the folks on this call, but in case we have constituents or advocates or reporters or anyone else who may want to kind of get a high-level understanding, here's what it is. BEAD stands for Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. It's part of a $42 billion investment that President Biden is making in ensuring that everyone in America has access to high-speed internet. That money, that national $42 billion federal number, gets allocated out to the states based on relative need. How many addresses within those states do not have access to high-speed internet? This program is administered by the National Telecommunication and Information Administration, who approves all of our plans. So everything we're doing, every kind of policy decision that we make and how to implement BEAD gets sent up to NTIA, and they approve it before we go forward. We have to complete all of their approval steps, which I'll go through in a bit, before we actually get access to Delaware's allocation of the BEAD funding. Delaware has been allocated $107 million from BEAD. So that's a lot of money. We are very confident, knock on wood, that is sufficient funding to make sure everyone in Delaware gets access to high-speed internet. In order to get access to that money, we need to complete 4 filings with NTIA, our federal overseer. 3 of those filings are complete and approved, and we have 1 at the end. These are all available. All the filings that you see listed are on our website, the link that's at the bottom of the page. There's a lot of links in here. You can always go to broadband.delaware.gov, and you can navigate to the BEAD page through there and get access to these if you can't write this down or forget where it is. Just remember broadband.delaware.gov. What we're going to focus on today is what's called Initial Proposal Volume 2. This is a filing that was just approved by NTIA last week. And this is what outlines the methods that we're going to go through to select subgrantees to actually do the work of building out this internet infrastructure. It contains all the information that I'm going to go over during this presentation and a lot more. You must read Initial Proposal Volume 2 in full and very carefully before deciding to apply to this program. There are a lot of requirements for this program, not all of which I'm going to go through during this presentation because it would take far too long. You must go through Initial Proposal Volume 2 in detail. After we go through this process of selecting our subgrantees, we then submit up to NTIA who we have selected to do this work, who's going to be receiving this funding to build out the internet infrastructure. And that submission happens in what's called the final plan. When that's approved by NTIA, that's where the money starts flowing and getting put to work for the people of Delaware. So BEAD timeline, actually, before we get to the next section. So BEAD, it's a lengthy program. There's a lot of things that we have to do to get the planning done, to get everything ready to receive this funding and get it out the door. You can see where we are now, this pre-qualification phase, the very start of subgrantee selection. After this is over, after subgrantee selection is over, we submit that final plan, final proposal up to NTIA. Once that's approved, that kicks off when the money starts flowing, and it starts a 4-year implementation period. So if you're on this call and you're a constituent who needs access to high-speed internet and would like to know when am I going to get it, we won't know those exact kind of dates and timelines until the final proposal is approved by NTIA. And that's when our sub-awardees will start doing their permitting, their walkouts, the real detail engineering, and start to get to work. And you'll see the crews along the side of the road deploying the wires and the fiber. Again, before we go fully to the next phase, what I'll remind you is you can use the Q&A feature in Zoom if you would like to submit a question. You can also submit questions after this presentation up through May 31st by emailing bead, B-E-A-D, @delaware.gov. So the pre-qualification phase, this is the first start of our BEAD subgrantee selection process. In this section of the presentation, I'm going to talk about where the pre-qualification phase fits into the overall application and give a preview of kind of what the next steps of the application are. Again, I'm really going to emphasize this. All of this information is in Initial Proposal Volume 2, which is available on our website. I'm going to preview the next steps of the application, but not go into detail about them. But all the detail in the world, everything you need to know is in that Initial Proposal Volume 2. So first, pre-qualification. This is the start of a fair and transparent multi-part BEAD program grant selection process. Our goal is to make sure that no one is surprised, that everyone knows exactly what is required of them if they receive a sub-award, a sub-grant, and what they need to do in order to get that sub-grant, and that constituents have confidence that we are running this program in a responsible way. The pre-qualification phase gives prospective applicants time to prepare and submit information about their financial and organizational capabilities. This is about basic qualifications to fulfill the work of BEAD. Those that pass through pre-qualification that we approve will go to the next phase, which is called the scoring phase. And I'll talk a little more about that in a bit. The bottom line of pre-qualification, our goal, is we need to be as certain as humanly possible that when we award this taxpayer money to subgrantees, the work is going to be done on time and on budget and to the standards that we expect of folks that are working with taxpayer money. 100% certain. We're not risking anything here. We only want to work and award subgrants to carriers, to electrical co-ops, other entities that we are 100% certain will be able to build out this internet infrastructure. So there's a lot of information that we are going to ask from our prospective applicants to put together and send to us. So again, we can have that 100% certainty. For everything that you submit to us, and I'm going to go into some detail about what that is, we are going to evaluate it on 3 standards. Completeness. Do you answer the question and send up the things that we have explicitly asked for? Sufficiency. Does it meet a minimum threshold of compliance, standards, and competence in order to do the work of BEAD? And then demonstrated capabilities. Does the application have any omissions or indications that create concern about history or capabilities of potential subgrantees? to meet all of our standards and statutes. And I'll highlight here, you can see on the slide, there's a parens, including contractors and subcontractors. As the subgrantee, you are ultimately responsible for anyone that you hire down to. So if you bring on a subgrantee, or I'm sorry, a subcontractor, and they, maybe aren't able to perform the work, that's on you as the subgrantee. So we want to be sure not only that you have the capability, that you will only contract or subcontract with folks that are very capable and maintain these high standards for the use of taxpayer funding. The timeline for the pre-qualification phase. Today, May 14th, we're doing the webinar. We've also released the pre-qualification application. So in the same email that you received this webinar this morning, you received the pre-qualification application as a PDF attachment. That application lists in detail everything you'll be required to submit through a portal. I'm going to talk about the portal more in a second. Starting today, we have the about a little over 2-week question period. May 31st is the end of the question submission period. You can submit questions to bead@delaware.gov and or through the Q&A feature of this Zoom. Then on June 13th, 30 days from today, the Q&A document will be published to broadband.delaware.gov and the application portal will open. I'll add one caveat. June 13th is kind of our deadline to publish that Q&A document. We're going to publish it as soon as it's ready, but we will certainly be publishing it when the portal opens at the very latest. Hopeful to have a little bit before that, so you have more time to review and prepare your application. All applications are going to be submitted through the state's procurement portal, which is called Bonfire. If you've ever done work with the state, you have certainly worked with Bonfire. I should say recently done work through the state, you have worked with Bonfire. It's a portal through which you'll create a login, one login per entity, and then you'll upload all your documents and click some yes, no on certifications that will go through that kind of thing and submit there. We will review the applications in Bonfire, and that's also where we kind of select yes, cleared or no, not cleared. Applications must be submitted by July 9th, so it's a little under 2 months from today. That's the deadline's close of business, which is 5 o'clock. It got a little bump out because of the 4th of July holiday. We gave a few extra days than we were originally anticipating. So you're welcome. You don't have to work that hard, hopefully over the holiday. So that's that deadline is going to be July 9th. I'm going to check real quick the chat and the Q&A to make sure there's nothing I need to look at there. There doesn't seem to be. Great. Okay, so we will keep going. Where this fits within the greater subgrantee selection phases. So pre-qualification, all the way to the left. That's where we are now. Q2 of 2024. Q2 of 2024. That kicks off when you can submit your pre-qualification, where it will be reviewed. That's what we're doing right now, right? That's why we're all here. Once some entities are cleared through pre-qualification, we move just those entities into the scoring phase. The scoring phase will start with us, DTI, the Delaware Broadband Office, releasing grant areas. Then the qualified applicants will bid on those grant areas, and they will submit how much they are bidding on terms of cost, how long the timeline will be, speed to deployment. There's workforce criteria, there are affordability criteria, and it's all very clearly laid out in a very objective scoring rubric. Those plans get submitted. It's purely based on score. We add up the points, and that makes the award. Again, all this information, very detailed, is in our initial proposal, volume 2. If necessary, we will then go to a negotiation phase. The only time that we would go to negotiation is if not all of our grant areas receive a bid. So if we might draw an area and no one wants to serve it, that's a tough one for us. So we then need to enter negotiation to make sure we can serve that area. Or if the total amount that is bid from the carriers exceeds our $107 million allocation from NTA. And one caveat actually I'll put on that I should have mentioned earlier. It's $107 million minus overhead and operational expenses. So that's not the total amount that will be awarded out. It's, we have to factor in 6 years total of not just staff expenses, but also our consultants. We have to do, other reviews, and there's a lot of technical work that's done on our side that gets paid for out of that $107 million. So the actual award amount will be lower than that. Once we're through negotiation and we have commitments to cover the entire state and make sure that every address in Delaware has high-speed internet, we will then submit our final plan up to NTIA for approval. Then once it's approved, that's when the funding starts flowing. In an ideal world, you have a very broad timeline up here, meaning we go through scoring by the end of Q3, which means by September of 2024, send our submission up to NTIA, and they approve as quickly as possible. I know that they will try to do as quickly as possible, hopefully by the end of the year or the start of 2025, so the work can get going. You may notice that while I have dates up for the, on a previous slide, when we go for the pre-qualification phase, we don't know when the scoring phase will start. Our goal is to move right from pre-qualification into scoring. However, there is another approval that I didn't go into any detail on that we need from NTIA, and that is our list of addresses in Delaware that do not have access to high-speed internet. There's a very rigorous process that some folks on this call participated in called the challenge process, where we've refined our list of addresses that don't have access to high-speed internet. Now that we've completed that, we send it up to the feds for their approval. We cannot start scoring until that is approved. So that's an X factor. Again, we're hoping it's quick. We're hoping that we're going to move seamlessly from pre-qualification right into scoring, but there could be a delay, and frankly, that delay could be weeks. There is a small chance I think it could be months. So that would really throw off our timeline. But we're hoping to have everything move as quickly as possible through it. All right, so our pre-qualification application, we're going to start going into some more granular detail. I feel bad. People who have seen my presentations before know I like to bring a little bit of personality to them usually. This one I'm being a lot more buttoned up because this is, we have to be really precise in our language. So I apologize if the next 5-6 slides are a little dry, but we really want to be clear on what's going on. So first, the elements of pre-qualification. 4 broad categories of the types of information that we are going to ask entities to submit to us to prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that they can complete the work on budget and on schedule. First, financial capability. I'm going to go through each of these has a slide, so we're going to go through some more detail. Financial capability. Are you capitalized? Are you able to do this work, particularly given some of the quirks of BEAD, particularly that is a reimbursement program. We do not give you money up front. You do the work, then invoice us once you have connected homes and businesses, or once you've connected those addresses. 2, organizational capability. Do you have the personnel in place to commit these work, including the contractors or subcontractors? If you don't, how will you get them in place to commit the work? How can we be confident that you have everything you need to do this work? Under organizational as well, there's legal and ownership requirements. You need to, there's a federal regulation that you could turn over who owns your entity. A legal compliance statement they'll talk about, and also an explanation of your past projects. What other state or federally funded projects have you done, and how has it gone? Certifications and compliance. Ooh, there are a bunch of certifications you need to make during pre-qualification. It's quite a bit. And there are things, basically there are certifications that say, we understand that this is the rule in BEAD and we agree to it. So we just want to make sure that everyone's going into this wide open, with eyes wide open, and know what they're getting into. And then finally, federal labor and employment law. Delaware, our plan has a really, really robust workforce, has really robust workforce requirements, and we want to be sure that you are planning for how you're going to have the workforce in place to do this, and also that you're treating your workforce fairly, that you have a plan for safety, that kind of thing for the workers who will be doing this work. First, financial capability. Baseline, audited financial statements from the prior 3 fiscal years. So that's pretty straightforward. I'll add, there's a slide I have at the end of this for new entrants to the market. So if you're a new company that hasn't, that you don't have 3 years, for example, you might not have existed for the past 3 years, there's ways that you can still participate in this program that I'll go over on the slide towards the end. Understanding and written acknowledgements. that BEAD funds are issued as reimbursements. I see a question in the Q&A that actually I can answer right now. So it's not the way that reimbursement will work. We're going to work this out as we actually make the awards, but as a baseline, what I'll say is we will issue reimbursements as customers are connected. That does not mean active customer. What it means is that you have gone to that house, you built your network that if that customer were to sign up, they could call and sign up right there. But you do not have to have the subscriber before we start the reimbursements. And we will, for example, what we'll work on is, let's say that you have a grant area with 1,000 addresses in it. We'll work out a reimbursement schedule that once 10% of those houses are connected, you will get 10% of your total award. So what's important to know there, because this is different than how some other programs work, where you get the money up front, where maybe you get reimbursed per task. So if you need to, build a new data center or a new central office or something, you might get reimbursed for building that data center central office. That is not how this works. If you need to build a new central office or data center, you can do that, but you don't actually get any money back from us until customers are connected to the internet. And again, not active customers, this question in the Q&A from William. It's as the network would enable as someone to be connected, is when the reimbursement can start flowing. Second, the BEAD program requires a 25% match, and at least 25% match. So we need to be certain that you have the capital to do that match, right? That if we give you the 75% of the funding required to do this build out, that you have in the bank or access to from a bank that 25% match, because we don't want to wait for you to raise the funding to do your match, right? It's at least 25%. You can go higher than 25% if you need to. Performance bond or letter of credit is required. This is a federal requirement. It's not something that we added in. So that's why I put this URL at the bottom that you can go and read what the letter of credit requirements are. But basically what the short answer is that that's what proves that you have the funding in place to do the 25% match and to outlay the money up front to then, to get reimbursed, right? That you're well capitalized in that way. Again, so that we can be 100% confident that if we make the award to you, that you're going to be able to follow through. But really look at this. It's described in our initial proposal, volume 2, but also do deep dive on the federal NTIA website on the letter of credit that goes into a lot of detail about what's required. Again, that's a federal requirement. It's not something from that Delaware has put in place on top of it. I agree with that as a federal requirement, but it's not something that we put in place. Organizational capability. So we will ask for an organizational chart of who will be working on this program, resumes of key personnel, ownership information, who are the 10% or more owners of your company, that the folks that you employ have certifications and licenses to do the work necessary to do a broadband high-speed internet build out. Legal opinion acknowledgement. This is important and a little nuanced. So what we will ask you to certify is an understanding that during the scoring phase, if you make it to the scoring phase, you will be submitting a letter by an attorney regarding your qualifications and past compliance with federal and state laws. And I have a slide later called Laws to Review. You do not need to have that letter ready for pre-qualification. You will need to have it ready for scoring. So we just want you to acknowledge that you should get that working on with your attorneys to review all applicable laws and make sure that you understand the requirements that all the legal requirements to complete this work, and whether as a company you've complied with all applicable laws historically. Finally, and this is really important, SAM.gov registration, unique entity identifier. SAM.gov is the federal website that grantees, kind of coordinates grantees. Make sure you have a SAM.gov registration. You can go to the website and get one. It doesn't happen overnight, which is why we want folks to get started on it now. But you will need a SAM.gov UEI, and it needs to be active in order to participate in this process. I'll also add, these slides are, I'm hitting the highlights, but they're not comprehensive. There are some other things in IP2 and in our application. So you do, hearing this presentation, seeing these slides is not in any way a replacement for reviewing Initial Proposal Volume 2 in detail and looking at the application in detail. Second note about organizational capability, which is experience in past projects. Basically, we want to know, have you gotten money from the federal government or state government before to do this sort of work? How has it gone? Have you defaulted on any awards in the past? How big have those projects been? Have you done projects of this size before? Again, how has it gone? This sort of stuff that you'll need to submit up to us. Certification and compliance. As I mentioned, there's a heck of a heap of certifications required to do this pre-qualification. Some of them are ones that we have added. Most of them are federal, to be honest with you. The big ones are Environmental Historic Preservation, National Environmental Preservation Act, NEPA. There's a lot of permitting that an awardee will have to go through in order to before they start work. You have to research that on your end and make sure that you agree that you're going to go through all of it. There are supply chain and cybersecurity plans. So these are cybersecurity. NIST, the National Institute of Science and Technology, has a cybersecurity framework you should review along with the executive order. There's all the stuff that's up here, also in volume 2, also in the application, and make sure you agree that your network meets those cybersecurity requirements. There's also a federal requirement that programs meet the Build American, Buy American, BABA requirements. So that involves the sourcing of materials for your network. There are certain percentages of certain types of materials that need to be built in America. It's very detailed, and there are exclusions. It's not everything, but you really do need to take a look at the federal websites information in order to make sure that you as an entity can meet all the Build America, Buy America requirements. And I'll also add, this was not a requirement for other grant programs. So this is something, just because you've done other federally funded grants, don't assume that you are meeting BABA requirements. You should review them for this plan, because you will be verifying, if you choose to participate, you will be verifying that you can source from Build America, Buy America. Fair labor practices. So there's a certification for this, that you are in past compliance with federal labor and employment laws on broadband deployment projects for the past 3 years. If you have violations, you can tell us about them and what you're doing maybe to correct where previous violations went awry. Describe your labor practices, including wage scales and payment practices, workplace safety committees, whether you have any. We also ask you to do an initial evaluation of your workforce. Do you have in-house training? Do you have apprenticeship programs, labor management committees? Do you use a directly employed workforce, or do you use contractors? If you use contractors, how do you ensure that those contractors are treating their workforce fairly and in compliance with applicable laws? Do you use a unionized workforce and all the protections that come along with a unionized workforce? We ask you to discuss, do you have any initiatives to ensure diversity in your hiring? And in inclusivity, that we want to make sure that the workers doing this represent, all are qualified at the highest level and represent everyone, represent Delaware or the region of the country, right? Whatever you have, we want you to do this evaluation, send it up to us. New entrants to the market. So you will have noticed that a lot of these things ask for historic stuff, right? 3 years of audited financial statements, certification of workforce compliance. If you're a new company, you don't have any of that. So there are alternative ways that you can show your qualification. So first, even if you're a new company, we do expect that you've hired qualified people. And so we will want those resumes. We'll want to see, do the folks who are working with you have the operational experience to know what they're doing? Do you have a technology officer with experience, that kind of stuff? Do you have licensing and certifications? Project descriptions and narrative from contractors and subcontractors, right? Who you're gonna, if you're a new company, you're probably, well, you can do whatever you want. I would imagine you're gonna end up contracting some. How are you gonna select those contractors? Have you already identified them? What we require of those contractors? And then other operational or financial reports to ensure that you meet a sufficient capitalization in order to complete the BEAD program. Final notes, and then we'll get to Q&A. There's plenty of time for Q&A, which is great. Hopefully that's because I have not been talking too fast. Hopefully it's not because I've been talking too fast, and more because I'm just being very efficient in my word choice. Checklist for submission. And also, I should have said this at the beginning, and I apologize. I'm going to send out this slide deck, so you will be able to reference this later. Review all relevant documents. The BEAD Notice of Funding Opportunity, published by NTA, our initial proposal, volume 2, and all other relevant documents. get together your company name, information, taxpayer identification number, contact information. Part of that, identify a point person, a singular point person, to make sure that everything gets uploaded in the portal correctly. Collect financial, because you only have one registrant to our Delaware bonfire portal. So make sure you know who that's going to be. Collect financial statements and other documentation. Identify your managerial staff, who's going to be working on this project. Authenticate the USAM.gov registration, and a bonfire registration when we get there, but our application's not open yet. So when that is, you'll be able to get a bonfire application or a bonfire registration. Identify projects that have similar scope that you have done, ensure you have accurate ownership documentation, and identify your authorized organizational representative. Laws to review. I won't go through these out loud, but this is an important slide. This is not an exhaustive list of every law that you should do, that you need to review. We do expect that your legal counsel will do their own review of all applicable laws to this program. This is an overview of some that we have identified that are important, that put conditions and requirements on subgrantees. It is incumbent upon our subgrantees to verify that they are meeting all federal laws. Federal, state, and federal laws. So please do review these and make sure that you can meet them. Particularly permitting laws, that's a big one. Every state does permitting differently. If you get an award, it is no excuse to abrogate your timeline because you didn't know what the permitting laws in Delaware, for example, right? You need to review all of this in advance and make sure that when you commit to a timeline, you are fully committed to it. Timeline doesn't happen until scoring though. So that's not part of pre-qualification, but just by way of illustration. Key links, you've heard these documents mentioned 9,000 times, but here's where they are. Also down there, that email bead@delaware.gov, that's where you're going to send any questions that we don't answer today. Do not send them to me, send them to bead@delaware.gov. One thing I'll highlight about the questions, even though we are going to be very strict about questions about the Bead application, for a lot of folks on this call, we work with you on a number of different projects. You may have a different federal award that we talk to you about. You may, etc. We of course will still meet and talk about other things other than the Bead application process. But questions about the Bead application process very strictly should go to bead@delaware.gov. I will be sharing this slide deck over email to everyone who's registered, and I'll take a look at the Q&A. Oh, it looks like the 2 questions got answered. Great. I answered William's question. Yep, great. Wonderful. All right, I am going to vamp for about 8 seconds to see if anyone wants to type a question in real quick before we end. So start typing now. I want to thank you all so much for being here. I want to thank Amy for being. Our Q&A has been light so far, but I appreciate Amy being here to potentially answer questions if any came through. And everyone at CTC, as our partners who in this have been incredible. And all of our constituents. One thing that we've done a lot in our office is in stakeholder engagement. We've held over 20 town halls over the past 14 months. We've held over 100 small group or one-on-one meetings to make sure that what's reflected here in our plan reflects the will of the people of Delaware and what they want to see in a taxpayer-funded program that's administered in their state. I see. Will the portal have character limits? That is a great question, Roy, and it's a question I wish I had the answer to. And I actually don't think Amy does either, because we haven't actually finalized.
I do not.
Yeah, so that'll be something we'll have to answer in the official Q&A document, Roy. But thank you for sending it. I can see why that would be an important question. So as you prepare your materials, you don't draft something that's 10,000 words long and then you only have 100 words to answer. So we'll get that out to you. All right, not seeing any other questions come in. What is the expectation for the write-up for labor practices for the ISP and contractors if it uses any? Yes, so there's a lot of detail in our initial proposal, volume 2, about the kinds of information that you can submit. What we're looking for really is, are you thinking through these? If you don't have management labor committees, you can be transparent about that. We want to know what you're doing to think about these things to make sure that your workforce is well-trained, meets safety standards. And as I mentioned, kind of the base, this is a baseline evaluation. Really, we want to know, are you being transparent when you're thinking about these things? It comes into play as a preview a lot more in scoring. You will get a lot more points on our application if you have, in-house training, if you use a unionized workforce. But for pre-qualification, we're really looking for you to do an evaluation of your workforce and be transparent and honest what you have there. Anything else I should add on that, Amy?
No, I think you've covered it.
Great. All right. All right, I'm going to vamp for another 30 seconds to see if there's any more questions. And in my vamping, I will thank other members of our staff, Tammy Shelton, who has been with the Delaware Broadband Office since before I was here. Jacqueline Morris, who is a new addition to our office, the project manager working on ARPA and Bead. Kim Siegel's on our team. She's our director of digital equity programs, which we didn't talk about today, but is a huge priority for our office. So really thankful to all of them for their work. Okay, got a question in. The pre-qualification application refers to various templates, such as certifications templates. When will those be released? Great question. They will be released when the portal is open. So when on June 13th. So if they're ready before then and we can share them, we will. But as you might imagine, there are certain internal clearances we need to get before we release information. The latest they'll be released is June 13th. When you log into the Bonfire portal, there'll be a page of public documents, which will include all the templates, including the certification template. But the information about what you will need to certify is all within volume 2 and the application that was sent out earlier today and we posted to our website. So it'll be substantively identical, but the exact way that it gets sent up will be like that. Is there any difference in submission on workforce concerning the ISP as contractors? No. If you use a directly employed workforce and you would like to talk about the protections or the training that you offer your directly employed workforce, that's great. If you have contractors and you require, let's say that your contractors use certain certifications or trainings, you can submit that and that would be responsive and good information for us to have. So please send both. And we want to know how much of your workforce is directly employed versus contracted. That's important information for us. And again, pre-qualification, it's meeting a minimum kind of threshold, and then meeting a minimum threshold, and then but for scoring, the stuff like directly employed workforce, that comes into play with the score. It's not required in scoring, but it's you get more points if you're higher. If an applicant would like to fill this out in Spanish or Haitian Creole or any other language, I would ask that they send us a request and we will have this translated. It's not defaulted in Bonfire to be translated, but if an applicant is going to apply, would like to apply in Spanish. Now, having said that, applicants will need to interact with there's a lot of other conversations that we'll have in terms of the overview, implementing this over the next 6 years, and what languages will be able to accommodate and go in there. But if that is something that you would like to discuss and you are a prospective applicant, please email our office. And I would actually say, in terms of language accessibility, that's something you can email either to bead@delaware.gov or directly to me, roddy.flynn@delaware.gov, because it's not really about the application, it's about others. Our audit, this is going to be, Amy, I'm going to pass to you for this question. Our audit financials for 2023 expected, they may not be ready by July.
Yeah, if you do not have audited financials available by the time of the pre-qualification application, then we will request audited financial for the prior year and unaudited financials for 2023, and then that update with your audited financials as you get those for the scoring application.
Thank you, Amy. Questions can be coming in as I do my vamp, so I'm going to keep vamping like 30 seconds at a time and see if people keep coming through. I mentioned before the timeline going into scoring. We're hoping to go directly from pre-qualification to scoring. Our federal partners, I know, are working as quickly as they can to get everything approved so that we can move quickly from one to the other. But there are backups. They're trying to evaluate, all 50 states, all territories, DC are all doing this at the same time. Delaware's ahead of the curve, I'm very proud to say. We're one of the fastest moving states on Bead, and we hope to continue with that. Governor John Carney has actually set the goal for our office that we are the first state to be fully connected to the internet. So that's a very ambitious and right goal, because our constituents, as you can imagine, are very frustrated who don't have access to the internet. So we want to be sure that we're moving as quickly as possible to get everyone access. All right, not seeing any other questions, we will be bringing this to a conclusion. As I mentioned, this was recorded. The recording will be posted to our website tomorrow, along with the application that was sent out a little earlier today. I'll send out an email when the website is updated with all this. And then we start our a little over 2 weeks of questions. You can send questions as you're reading the application, reading volume 2, send those questions into bead@delaware.gov. Bead, B-E-A-D. Kara, oh, great. 2 more questions. Oh, thanks, Phil. Thanks for thanking me, Phil. That was nice of you. Kara Bailey asks, can the bonfire login be shared within a proposal entity team? Yes. I do know the answer to that one. There can only be 1 login per entity, but you can share that password with your team. Obviously, it's on you to make sure that ultimately whatever gets submitted reflects the final application. But understanding that multiple people may need to work on things, and get it up there. So you can definitely share it with them, as long as there's only 1 per application or per entity. All right. See, I got 2 new questions, so I feel like I need to do another 30 seconds of vamping. I could sing a song. No, I'm just kidding. I won't do that. Some standards, some Great American Songbook. All right, I'm staring at this Q&A to see if anything comes in. All right, we are going to bring this to a close. You can send any questions that come up later to bead@delaware.gov, and we will answer them when we publish our Q&A document, keeping it fair for everyone. Thank you to everyone who came to this. Very, very appreciative. And we will talk soon. Thank you all. We are concluding.